Kia ora tātou. Can I just firstly acknowledge what an amazing event this is. I think we need more of them up here, and I understand this came together in a short space of time as well, so just to all the people that have tautoko'd it, and it's also great to see that it's being recorded as well for posterity, I think is the term. Anyway, it's late in the day, and I'm digressing, so I'll just start by introducing myself through my pepeha. Ko maunga manaia e tārehu, e mihi ana ki te rangi, e mihi ana ki te whenua, e mihi ana ki ngā tāngata katoa. I start with that whakatauki because Maunga Manaia is the place that I've chosen to call my tūranga wāwai today. It's also a tūpuna maunga, and it also draws together my whakapapa on both my mother and father's side. So as you'll all know, on my father's side, we're Te Orewai and Ngāti Hine, and on my mother's side, from Ngāti Wai, basically up to Whangaroa and then over to the Hokianga is where my mother's from. And I recount those whakapapa connections through the names of my sons, Manaia, to acknowledge the ancestry of my mother, and Kawati, or Te Ringi Taimana or Kawati, acknowledging that story where Kawati and Te Whirowhiro encountered each other up at Waiomio. So that's my son, and it speaks to my whakapapa. The reason I start there is because what I've heard today from our hunga taiohi, and I look around and I see all my whaia, kaumātua kuia, tēnā koutou katoa. I understand that we are stewarding the mahi of our mātua tūpuna, and I'm fortunate enough to have led the Ministry of Social Development for the last 8 years, and more recently have been appointed as the first Regional Public Service Lead for Te Taitokerau, which is a new role established by the State Services Commission to convene government agencies around key kaupapa. So to give you an example of that, housing is something that I'm sure is dear to your heart as it is to mine. So that's one of the things that I'm very focused on at this stage. What I'm going to talk about today is mostly to do with MSD and the mahi that we've been doing. But before I outline that to you, I do want to mihi to you as whānau. Coming into this ui today, seeing so many familiar faces, whether it's the partnerships that we've put together through the work at MSD, or whether it's through the whanaungatanga that is the thread that weaves through time and space to connect us. And with that in mind, I want to acknowledge those that have departed, our departed whanaunga, and bid them farewell thrice times. But I'd also like to acknowledge Rob Cooper, who was instrumental in the development of Whānau Water, and for the role that he played in the roles that I have today. It was actually Rob that shoulder tapped me and said, "Hey boy, we're looking for this person up in Te Taitokerau, would you like to come home?" At the time I was working at Ngāti Whātua ki Ōrākei and in a whānau order related role. So today's a bit of a coming full circle for me. But I know it's late in the day and I'm standing between you and a ngāhau apparently. So I'm going to get to the pūtake of my kōrero. And just to give you a quick outline of what I'm going to talk about, I'll talk to you about MSD's new corporate strategy. I'll talk about the ways we're using kaupapa-based models of development, and importantly, how we've used kaupapa-based models alongside many of you when we were tested to ensure our whānau were supported through the initial COVID level 4 lockdown. And the reason for that is it's one thing to talk about things in good times and point to how awesome we are, but it's another when you're up against it and you can demonstrate that you walk the talk, so to speak, in a pono and tika. So I've got here we go. We've got a presentation here. For the first time, and the Ministry of Social Development's had many guises. Department of Social Welfare was a former guise, and I'm pleased to say that Te Pai Tawhiti and Te Pai Tata are the two organisational strategies for the Ministry of Social Development They're not a strategy off to the side for our whānau. They are the corporate strategy. And within those strategies, there are 3 key shifts that we're looking to make. One is around mana manaki, which is really about being tangata-centred or whānau-centred. The other one's kotahitanga, and that's about how we work with many of you in the roles and organisations that you hold. And the other one's kia takatū tātou, which is about looking beyond just the social indicators, but starting to look at how MSD can support whānau, hapu, iwi development in the economic sector. I'd also just point out that we're also building our own internal capability, and many of our whanaunga will know Marama Edwards, who's now the DCE Māori. She also manages a few other things, but it's nice to have a clear leader who has a focus at a corporate level to drive this out as well. You'll also know our Chief Executive as well, Debbie Power, who hails from up here as well, so that's also helpful for us up home here as well. Here locally, obviously, some of the case studies I'm going to share with you will point to how some of the experiences that I've had and mātauranga that I hold are weaved through the mahi that I'll talk about. But there is a team, and I'll talk about them shortly, but I would acknowledge that we also locally have a new Māori relationships manager, Annie Pittman, who many of you will know. So she's joined the team and will help with a lot of the mahi that I'll talk to. So what is the point of all of this? For me, this is about Māori succeeding as Māori. So, you know, I've just given you the corporate strategy, but what are we actually looking to do here? What do we mean? For me, it's Māori succeeding as Māori. This whanaunga of ours in the centre of the picture, you'll hear from him a little bit later, but he was the winner of our He Poutama Taitamariki Youth Employee of the Year Award, which is something that we've done at MSD to support the Northland Business Excellence Awards, because what we're wanting to do is normalise Māori success, and being a part of kaupapa like this today, but also mainstream kaupapa where we can start to share with our tauiwi whanaunga that you can succeed as Māori on any stage. The first case study that I'll talk about is a program called He Poutama Taitamariki, and I just want to acknowledge Jodie Hayward, who's here with us today, who was instrumental in seeding this kaupapa. It's when we first started, you've got to understand that most of you will understand the way that government departments work. Often policy set in Wellington, and to this day I still bump into people who's, even in relation to the last COVID lockdown in Auckland, someone mentioned that Wellington makes the rules and we implement them. As you all know, I'm a proud Ngāpuhi and a proud many things up here, and we don't really play that well that way. This was our starting point for He Poutama Taitamariki. It was about having aspiration for our young people. And the reason we focused on our young people is because it's something that's dear to all of our hearts. It's something that people talked about. When you're trying to drive change, it's often good to have something that you can point to say, well, that was the elephant in the room and we knocked that one off. So if we can do that there, then what else can we do? So that's really what this first case study is about. This was our context, and it still largely is. It's based on 2018 census data, but let's not get caught up in the in kind of the numbers yet. So that was what we were facing at the time. 77% of young people on a benefit at the time were Māori youth, and that number is still too high, but you'll note as I step you through this, we do have some green shoots. I don't know how easy that is for you to see, but just to give you you can see the map there. Northland used to look like the coast, and you'll see that we're getting lighter there in terms of, and what that's signalling is that we're improving as a region. So one of the things when I first started in my role in 2013 was we had the highest rates of unemployment, Māori unemployment, youth unemployment, all those things. The nice thing now is we don't hold those titles. We do have a few that I'm still unhappy about, but that's another kōrero. But when it comes to our NEET, which is a government term for young people not in education, employment or training, you can see that that bottom graph, and this is getting a bit harder. I hope you guys can see it, but I'll see if this pointer works. So at this point in time, we were up above 20% in terms of our NEET rate, and you can see that we've had a 10% reduction over the last couple of years. So that's quite significant. For those of you that are economically minded or statistically minded, if you were investing in something, if you could get a 10% return or a 10% improvement in something, that's a really stellar result. So we had the aspiration, we're tracking it, it's impacting. What's making the difference? What's making the difference is the fact that He Poutama Taitamariki wasn't developed nationally, it was developed locally. It was based on Māori models of development, in particular te whare tapawhā, te wheke, those sorts of models. The program is unique in that it starts from the aspirations of the Taitamariki rather than the Taitamariki have to fit into the program. And for those of you who are, and I know you're all well versed in whānau-centred services, that's the key. And it draws on what MSD is good at and what we're not good at. So, and it pairs it with what our partners are good at. And what MSD is good at is we're good at big stuff. So we're good at doing stuff at scale. And we've got information systems, and we've got good people who are very experienced at putting together things. But where we partner is around the nuances in terms of people who are closer to the whānau. And you'll hear from one of the service providers that we work with. So here's a quick clip so you can hear from some other people. Don't take it from me, take it from some of these people. And you'll note some of them are our whanaunga as well. Oh. So how do we get that one going?
So it's that whole thing of just wanting them to succeed beyond the circumstances that they've been given, and they didn't choose a lot of the circumstances that they're living in. So to be able to see a young person overcome that and even just, overcome just small things for them, it's a huge push. But when you're passionate about your area, so your regional, for Taitokerau as a whole, and my experience can only go from when I lived in Auckland for so many years and working with youth and realised that they whakapaparu all the way back up to Kaitaia or this region. That was my whole passion of when I eventually moved home back into Taitokerau, was I want to be able to create change in our own home, on our own whenua, and help realise what I realised as a kid as well. I love being brought up in the far north, and I want them to realise there's more than what they have in their hand at the moment.
I learned things about myself that I didn't even know was possible, and the support from the codies, the facilitators, it was it all worked out to be cool, and everyone got along. Everyone got along. The facilitators were amazing, and they just pushed us to be better and stuff. We did the work and stuff, but without their support, I don't think we would have made it. I wouldn't have made it without them.
From that program, I've seen massive changes within our youth. Those who actually engaged and and now actually seeing them outside of those programs, even if it's 12, 18 months down the track, how well they're actually doing. And there's still people that I catch up with today that are still in work, but even their wives or their partners, and seeing their kids and that around town, and we still have conversations about that too, and how thankful and how grateful they are for T500 and HPT and the mahi that we did to support them.
Initiatives like this are not easy. They can be very difficult. Resistant young people who have been underground for such a long time, I think is the best way to describe that. Sitting at home, doing nothing, being hōhā, on the drugs, and having no motivation to actually get out there and be the best that they can be. So to be a part of that was really, really good for me as an individual, but also as an organisation, given that in our community we are all whānau.
First year it was just so my benefit wouldn't get cut, but then, as I was saying, in my first week we had a careers person come up, and he taught us some really good things, but as he was leaving I actually stood up to thank him for his time and stuff, and I haven't actually done something like that since I was going to Kaupapa for school, and I know it just like awakened something inside me that just made me really buy into the program.
So, Trey Henry was last year's He Poutama Taitamariki award winner, and this year we look forward to crowning a new young person with that title. In terms of this next slide, really what this speaks to are some of the partnerships that we have in place, and it's not exhaustive. We've done programs with the Ngāti Ine Forestry Trust as well as the Ngāti Ine Health Trust. We have the Tiku Te Huku Joint Work Program, which is unique in that it's part of the Te Huku Iwi's treaty settlement. And then you heard earlier in the day from Martin and Janine Kaipo, and we've been doing some work in Otangare for some time with them and their trust. And what that was really about was looking at some early trialling some early place-based approaches to not only community development but whānau development. In terms of some of the things that we're currently focused on, in the wake of or the impacts of COVID, we're very focused on ensuring that whānau are able to take advantage of a lot of the jobs that are available, and so there is lots of mahi available. Week to week we have about 1,000 jobs available at any one time in Northland. Social procurement is something that we've built into some of the shovel-ready projects that you would have heard announced, and you'll note that in terms of some of the targets that we've set, that we're achieving beyond the target, and that's a good place to start given social procurement's a new method here in New Zealand. And it's also great to see that the councils are also starting to respond positively to some of the opportunities to partnering with Māori and whānau Māori. This is just a little bit of a plug to the way that we're trying to pivot our, what we call service centres, our offices, to ensure that they're not just about income support, but they're also about employment and mahi and training. And what I want to just finally finish with is just a really big applause and bouquet for all of our whānau order and Māori health and social service providers. What this slide speaks to is a collective effort that covers health, welfare, some of the iwi and policing effort that was put into place during that first level 4 lockdown. And then there's some, at the tail end here, some of the stuff that we did at MSD just to make sure that people had incomes. And I had some insight into the response from a health perspective that our Māori health providers did in response, and just the way that they moved to the front line, so to speak, to work with our whānau hats off and really mihi to you all for putting our whānau first. And then we also delivered collectively, I know we were all involved with making sure that whānau had their welfare packs or care packs or kai packs, whatever you want to call it. So those are big numbers. And what I would impress is that this didn't happen everywhere. This Taitokerau led the way in terms of how we all partnered up, and that's why I really mihi to our kaupapa around whanaungatanga and manaakitanga. For me personally, there's no playbook in terms of how you respond to something like COVID. But what I knew was that we could look to look at our mātauranga and our tikanga and our kaupapa to ensure that we could find a way, and that's what we did. Interestingly, you'll see that 50,000 jobs were protected here in Taitokerau, and there was quite a bit of prediction, or there were forecasts that as the wage subsidy came off, that people would lose jobs. We haven't really seen a big spike here in Taitokerau, which is really positive, but we can also see that in some of the surveys that we did with our businesses up here, and you could see that they were putting their kaimahi first. They were looking at driving costs out of other parts of the business, and as I said, we haven't seen the mass layoffs that were feared. What this points to is the work we're doing to ensure that Māori are getting into employment. There is the statement that I first heard at Hui Taumata in 2003, and it stuck with me. It was Parekura Horomia at the time who talked about when economic shocks occur, Māori are last on, first off. What this speaks to is the effort that we're putting in at MSD to ensure that we can ensure that that's not the case for our whānau. There's still opportunity to do more, and I think that's not just an MSD role, that's our collective role to ensure that we are supporting our whānau with whatever the supports they need, and if employment and training is the right option for them, that we can help pathway them. And as I said, the connected website, which kind of has all the available training and job opportunities into Taitokerau, is probably the first port of call, but otherwise just flick Kay Maria an email and she'll sort it. So that's the end of the kōrero, and I just wanted to leave you with a picture of a young Māori man achieving his Māori. Nō reira, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa.